Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the CATA Secondary School Podcast. I'm CJ Rosenborough, and in today's episode, we're discussing salary advocacy. We're excited, as always, to have Ashley and Katie joining us to share their insights and experiences. And before we jump into the conversation, we're going to quickly break down what we'll be covering in today's episode. So we're going to start off with the introduction of laying the groundwork of where are we in terms of salary in the field of athletic training. And then we're going to go into quantifying your worth and finish up with how to put that all together and make the argument to try and increase your salary or improve your workplace. So let's dive right in. 10,000 foot view of the profession. This is going to ruffle some feathers because I was going through this data and I was like, this is not good. Secondary school athletic trainers account for 27% of the salary survey responses. So this is from the NATA. 7,844 people responded to the salary survey, which is laughably low for a national number. I think we have 40 to 50,000 athletic trainers in the country. Does that sound accurate? I found a couple numbers and it was like a huge range.
I don't know what the number is, but it's officially the largest setting for athletic trainers in the country. As far as NATA membership, I mean, I'm gonna just assume that the rest of it follows the NATA membership, but secondary school athletic trainers is the largest number of setting as far as setting goes.
Yeah. So there's a total of 7,844 for all settings. The 27% of that is 2,067 were from the secondary school setting, which if you think about it, in Colorado, we have, do you guys know how many secondary school athletic trainers we have off the top of your head? I know we have like 600 ATs in the state. Ish.
I think it's 300 and change.
So that's one state. So 300 in our state, and out of the whole country, only 2,000 and some change responded to this survey. That's pretty bad. It's really, really low. We are not really helping ourselves here, Katie.
Yeah.
If we're not responding to a salary survey, how can we expect to make it a solid argument to increase our salary?
Yeah, it's really hard for me. I get really upset with this. Like you cannot complain if you are not doing something to help yourselves. If you're not reporting your number, how are we supposed to know? On top of that, report to Atlas, if your name is in the system, then we can keep track of things and try to help you. But if you're not doing anything and trying to do it by yourself, then yes, you're on an island. You're putting yourself on an island by not helping yourself and not helping the rest of us. If you're not contributing to the full system, you're a non-contributor, right? Like you cannot complain if you're not doing something to help the rest of us. So if your number's not in there, if you're exceedingly low, that's a problem. It's going to bring the percentage down, and it's a way to argue for yourself to get up to at least the average. If you're exceedingly high, help your friends out. Put that number in so the rest of us can get up there.
Yeah, because if you bring the floor up, guess what? You're not going to look exceedingly high anymore, so you're going to have to get a raise to stay high, so it increases your number. Ashley, another interesting thing from this. So this is, to preface, this is all from the secondary school salary survey on NATA, and you can go into the there's like a query section where you can enter in your information specifically. So you can select to like Colorado, how many years, secondary school setting, yada, yada. So you can find that. And then you can also find just like the whole PDF of all the information and kind of sift through it. So these numbers are from that PDF. And then we're going to get into the specific numbers in just a little bit. But of those 2,067 responses for the secondary school athletic trainers, 57% were less than 35 years old. Ashley, well, and I'll add before I ask the question, 68% of the responses were 15 years or less in tenure, and 52% were 10 years or less in tenure. So we have over half of the people responding to this are under 35 and less than 10 years in tenure. If we can't keep people in our profession, how do we increase the salary if we have massive turnover and people leaving the profession?
That's a good question, CJ, and that is a complicated answer.
We have time. Go ahead.
There's so many facets to it, but it is very interesting. And I'm wondering, did you call on me because I'm one of the old ones?
Well, I'm not going to answer that. I just went Katie first and then to you. So,
but we do have to work on athletic training retention and keeping us in the field because many of us burn out so quickly. So I think that's the reason for that. But yeah, Katie, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm also one of the old ones. I don't fit either of those two groups anymore. But I would say the change is happening. There are no longer a ton of teacher athletic trainers. No one is teaching a full school day and then doing athletic training after the school day. I think those individuals see themselves as a teacher first most of the time. And so you're not seeing that population here, because when you talk about your career, they're going to talk about their teaching career. So maybe they aren't contributing, and the way they were paid currently may be different than how they were in the past, but it used to be just like a stipend for working after school. And it
It's
wasn't,
essentially a coach
yeah,
teaching and then a stipend.
it's not quite the same. So I would hope that as we continue to progress, because we are a young profession, I would expect that we're going to see these numbers change as the role of the athletic trainer has changed. It is, we've talked about it in other episodes now, but you're not, athletic trainers are doing full-time work now. You're a full-time athletic trainer. You're going in just for athletic training. You're not going in and teaching classes all day and then staying to cover practices, or just staying to tape and then leaving, or whatever the case may be. The profession has changed, and so I believe we'll start to see more changes with that. But there's a high level of burnout in this profession, and that's part of, I assume, what we're talking about today, and then more when we talk about work-life balance and other topics that we've already had on this podcast. What we're going to see is, how can we get away from the burnout so that we're not talking about such high numbers being entry level brand new grads that are coming out and then burning out so fast that they never get to more than 15 years of experience.
Mm-hmm. And to preface or to add on, this information is from 2023 when they released the salary survey. We are actually a month or two away. When this releases, I think we'll be a month away from the 2026 salary survey being released. So I'm interested to see how these numbers have changed over the past 3 years. Because if you think about it, this is actually collected from 2022, because they just did the salary survey in 2025 and they're releasing in 2026. So by the time the new salary survey comes out, this will be 4 years old information. So really excited to see how that's changed. And I think, like you said, our profession's changing. One of the biggest changes is a required master's degree. And I think part of that is, one, to keep us in line with other healthcare professionals, which I think is a good thing. I'm biased. I went through a master's program, but I also think it will keep people in the profession for longer. That longevity, I think, is one of the key factors of, if we can keep people being an athletic trainer, the salaries will rise, and then the floor will start to rise. I think that is an important part of it, that we're not just, I don't know what I'm trying to get at, but we have a higher level of education.
Well, I think there's a change coming with it as well, and it just hasn't quite hit us. But as that bachelor's degree went away, and now there's not GA positions available because
Mm-hmm.
because they don't exist, and then you add in NIL deals and you see how much money colleges are making, you're going to suddenly see a shift from where GAs used to get paid by getting their tuition covered. Now you actually have to pay those people. So now the colleges have to make the adjustment, and then the high schools are going to have to make the adjustment as well. And so the problem being that, where are the high schools going to get the money to pay athletic trainers if at the college level you can make more? And then you'll have to see it trickle through the divisions of college athletic trainers as it moves down to high school and, or Division 2, Division 3, JUCO, however that breaks down until the high school. But traditionally, there are more high school, secondary schools athletic trainers than there are any other traditional role, because there's so many of them.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I don't think it necessarily shows that we're like more trained, like I have a master's, therefore I'm better than you. I think it more accurately portrays our training. I don't think a bachelor's accurately portrays what you like, because you guys are both bachelors in athletic training, right?
No, I'm a
Yes.
master's, and my master's was pointless.
Okay.
I'm a bachelor's in athletic training and a master's in exercise physiology,
Yeah.
applied exercise
Mm-hmm.
physiology, meaning
Yeah.
I know how to use it.
Ashley, you were a bachelor's in like science and then master's in athletic training?
No, I was a bachelor's in athletic training and a
Oh, okay.
master's in kinesiology and biomechanics.
And your master's didn't really help that
No,
much.
all I did
Yeah.
was write 10 papers a week, and I
Yeah.
paid
So,
20 grand to do it.
and that, I guess that's my point. Like the training that you got in the bachelor's, I think is very similar to the training we're getting in the master's. It's just more truncated. We are older. But I don't think it's I'm better because I have a master's degree in athletic training where you have a bachelor's degree. I think they're kind of the same
Okay,
with a little bit more requirements,
can
but
I
I think it
touch
just
on
better
this?
reflects.
Somebody explained it to me one
Yep.
time, and I think it's the makes the most sense to me, I guess. It's an entry level career, no matter what, entry level education. So you are going into the field with no prior experience on it, no matter what your degree is, whether it's a bachelor's degree, a master's degree. Guess what? So is chiropractics and physical therapy. So when you talk about it, you are still continuing your education after you've done this, right? The difference is like a medical doctor, they have done a level of schooling, then they've gone to a more specialized, more specialized, more specialized before that, right? So they have to
Mm-hmm.
take their entry level, then they take the MCAT. Now they're in their doctor schooling. And then they do a residency, and then they do a fellowship, and then they are specialized as a surgeon or a whatever specialty they go into, right? So we are all entry level professionals. You graduate from college, this is your starting point, and now you're going to learn more as you gain the experience, right? So our career, our experience is our medical school,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's how it makes sense to me. So your bachelor's degree and your master's degree are the exact same education. You're still an entry level worker.
I think
Yeah,
where we see that big change is the perception
it is the
of it.
perception.
Like, oh, I have a
Right.
master's degree in this. I know what I'm talking about. Hits a little bit heavier than I have a bachelor's. Hits a little bit heavier than I have an associate's in this.
Mhm,
Associate's is
mhm.
2 years. Master's is 2 years. Bachelor's is arguably 2 years. I mean, let's be honest. The first 2 years is basically just high school plus. And then you actually get into your core classes after you've paid a lot of money to get there. But anyways, so of these responses, 66% of the responses has master's degree or professional degree. 29 had a bachelor's degree. So we're seeing that switch. But I'm curious how many of those master's degrees were, like you guys, added on top of their athletic training degree, and they have a master's degree on top of that. So take that with a grain of salt. All right. So getting into the salary ranges, again, this is from 2023. Less than 1 year, the salary range nationally was 51,500. I rounded up to the closest half on all of these. 1 to 5 years was 58,000. 6 to 10 years was 62,500. 11 to 15 was 67,000. And this is where less than 15 years of tenure, this is where 68% of the responses were from. So 68% of the responses were 11 to 15 or less. And then you get to 16 to 20 years, 70,000, 21 to 25, 76,000, 26 to 30, 79,000, 31 to 40, 82,000. So it's pretty rough. You stay in for 40 years and you're making 82. That's tough.
I would love to know what that breakdown is. Like, are those the
By
teacher
state.
athletic trainers, like,
Oh, yeah.
right? Because 40
Negligible.
and well, and where, because 40 years in the profession, we're talking the 80s, 90s. Someone help me math. We had this problem. Math is not my strong suit, everybody, just know that. But that those athletic trainers weren't just doing athletic training in the 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So getting to 82 would be interesting to know how where their 82 comes from. But also that 51.5, what is the current FLSA in Colorado? Because aren't we up to 55 now? So you can't even be at 51 in Colorado because you have to
Unless you're
be making.
non-exempt.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, so you're less than 1 year. You can't even be at
Mm-hmm.
51. You have to be at 55 in Colorado,
Yeah. And
unless you're working private entity. In which case, like, let's talk later. Well, I think we go later on the list. We're going to talk about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll dive into some
So
of those. Yeah.
yeah, but so it'd be interesting to know. I know that's not. I know Colorado's bad. Like we have a high.
Oh, we're gonna get into
Yeah.
that.
Yep. So okay, good. But I'm just saying, like, those first two numbers don't matter because you
Mhm.
have to make more.
That is yeah, I think the 2026 salary range is going to see that less than 1 year. It's going to be like the 53, 54,
Right.
55 range. The 38 to $42,000 range, I think, has gone kind of out the window in Colorado specifically
Right.
because our cost of living is so high that you have to.
Right.
Um, to answer your question about how many are teachers and athletic trainers, I believe full-time athletics only was about 1,000 of the responses, and then the teaching and athletics was like 70 response. So it's pretty
So they're
low.
not even answering.
Yeah, yeah, they're not
Okay.
being caught into this. I mean, nobody's answering, but they
Well,
are especially
correct.
not
Yeah, but
answering.
correct. Noted.
um,
Yeah, yeah. I already yelled about that. I've moved on.
yeah, so we already talked about this, but if 68% of the athletic trainers are less than 15 years of tenure, that would drive salaries down because we're having people leave before those salaries can get higher. Now, there is something to be said about why are they so low to begin with, and we've kind of touched on like the master's degree will kind of help. The FLSA will help bring that floor up, but longevity in our profession, I think, plays a pretty big part in our salaries. And the fact that we can't people in the profession for more than 15 years hurts our salaries because then we don't have that upper end of the average pulling us up. We just have a bunch of people in the low range, which brings our average way down. Which then, when we look at the numbers, we say, "Oh, well, the average salary is 58,000." Well, it's because we have everyone in that 1 to 5 year range, and we don't have that many people in the 16 to 30 years, so we don't have that upper to bring us up to the 70,000 average. We only have everyone just clumping down in the bottom, which is harmful when you just look at the data. Okay, so moving on to the last part, which I wanted to put in because I thought it was so incredibly stupid, and I want to get your thoughts on it because I really don't have a reason why. There is a gender equality. So when you're going into this discussion, you have to talk about it. Women are paid on average $10,500 less than men, and there are almost twice as many women in this profession as men who answered the salary survey. Katie, why?
CJ, I don't know. I I don't think we need to get into Katie's opinions on that on this podcast. Um it's it is a fascinating world where I am a female who knows a lot of things about a lot of sports, and but how dare I speak on something that I was never able to do? Which is I am towing a line as best I can
You're
right
doing a
now
great job.
of not
I threw
saying
you a landmine.
all the things I want to say. I yeah, I it's a hard topic to answer politely. Um I think we're seeing a change. I think as we see more and more great female athletes, great female coaches, great female officials, great female athletic trainers continue to move up and do first time roles in this, we are going to see changes keep continuing to happen. There are a lot of very smart female athletic trainers out there. It is a male dominated profession. The good old boys club exists. We are still fighting that.
Okay, Ashley, you're not getting away. You're not getting off scot free on this question. So coming your way on this.
Can I use a personal experience?
Of course.
So with a different employer, I ended up leaving the profession for a financial job, but right before that, I had learned of a fellow male employee who was in the career about 3-ish years at that point, and I was in the career for about 13-ish years at that point, and he was getting paid significantly more than me at the same employer doing the same job. And actually, he was at a smaller school. So, that's kind of one of the reasons I ended up leaving the profession shortly and I went to the financial sector. um, because I was like, well, that's not cool at all. I'm obviously not valued. But then I was able to come back and renegotiate and make a lot more. So it did kind of help boost me up because I was like, well, so and so's making this. So you're going to pay me this or I'm not coming back. And they did. So it worked out. But yeah.
My experience hiring employees had nothing to do with their gender at all, which I'm happy to
Good.
be able to
How it
say
should
that out
be.
loud. But I will say that longevity became a problem because as the FLSA changed and it would go up and up and up, they were not changing, they weren't accounting for longevity when they made those changes. So the athletic trainers that had been employed longer, and it affected me the most, so I was annoyed, which is the nicest way to say that. But I we would see the new grads coming in and getting paid the same because they would bump to just the minimum. So all the athletic trainers would get bumped to what the minimum state pay had to be, and they wouldn't account for any percentage changes. And so that piece is really annoying to me, and I think that's part of what we have to um, look at when we talk about athletic training and experience and things like that, where the longevity of the athletic trainers, as these pay bumps are getting put into place by the government, not our employers, they have to also make that change. And when you start that argument, because I also had an experience like Ashley where I found out someone was getting paid more than I was, and I'd been working there for more than 10 years and was a supervisor, and I sure sent off an email that said, hey, I just found out this information and I'd like to be informed as to why all of my responsibilities aren't being compensated when this person has been working here less than a year and is currently making more than I am. Um, and of course, they said, well, that's not true. And I was like, here's the paperwork. I don't know why she shared it with me, but she sure did. And I was like, here, you can compare dollar for dollar on our pay stubs what it looks like. And of course, companies don't love for that to happen, but you're allowed.
So I was wondering, well, this got me thinking that so in my last job in that predicament I was in, many of us were working in that district for quite a long time. And so we were being paid on the, what we were originally paid, which, 10 years previously was significantly lower than even an incoming. And then we were only getting those annual or even biannual like 1% raises, right? And so then, 10 years goes by, now your entrance pay has gone up on the market. And so I think that's one of the reasons is
Mhm.
they were just letting us coast by. Of course, the company doesn't want to pay us more money if they don't have to. So, and I do think that that was maybe one of the factors of that. We were still kind of based on our older salaries and they weren't keeping up with us.
I think part of it also when we do this is when you talk about um, the older athletic trainers not being accounted for on the survey. Well, Ashley and I have been here long enough that we would account on that survey now, but it took me a long time to understand all of this and be able to contribute to this
Difficult.
conversation.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a lot, but when I started and I was making so much less, every pay bump was great because I was getting
Mhm.
paid more, you know? And so it's hard to then complain about a significant pay bump, right? And so I think there's that plays into this a lot. When all of a sudden you got a $5 an hour raise, you're like, oh my God, this is so great. Why would you complain about it? But then you
Mhm.
have to go into the thought process of, oh yeah, everybody got that. And I'm still more experienced and have more value than just that pay bump.
Yeah. So we're gonna dive into that pretty quickly. Actually, it's the start of the next section. So right before we get there, I'm gonna go a little bit more Colorado specific, just to throw those numbers out. But these numbers are basically just the tip of the iceberg. Go look at the salary survey query function yourself and understand these. So out of the country, 5% of the responders were from District 7. So the range was 4% to 13%. So we are very, very low. The only district that was lower was District 10, which doesn't have a lot of people in it. The salary average for District 7 is 63,000. And this is for secondary school athletic trainers. For Colorado, the sample size was 18 responses. That is 1 8. 18 responses. 18 people responded to this salary survey. 13 of them had master's degree. The median was $56,900. The national is $62,400. So we're seeing the master's degree median being lower than the national. 25% had a salary greater than 69,000. The national for that was 77,000. So based on what was reported from those 13 people, we are significantly lower than the national standards. 2 of the 13 responses were 1 to 5 years, and they listed $0 as their salary. I'm sure that dragged it down significantly. So these numbers are not super accurate. Katie, you're doing a great job holding it in. Keep it up. 7 of the responses were 6 to 10 years, and then 4 of the responses were 11 years or more in experience. When we look at the bachelor's degree, the median was $66,500, so $10,000 higher median. The national is $62,400, as a reminder. The sample size was 5 for people with a bachelor's degree. 1 was 6 to 10 years. The other 4 were 16 to more, 16 plus years. So when we look at that, this is all to show, look at the numbers, but actually think critically about them and look into, some people could look at this and say, oh, master's degree, look, the median for a master's degree is actually lower than bachelor's degree. No, there are 2 people who listed $0 as their salary, and then the bachelor's is all 16 plus pretty much. So their salaries are going to be higher because they have 16 plus years of experience, whereas the majority of people for the masters that responded were in the 6 to 10 year range. Katie, go ahead, and then I'll get us over to section 2 because you are about to burst.
Nope, we agreed on professionalism on this podcast. We're going to remain professional. We are not. A statistician couldn't even use these numbers. A statistician would say, "Oh, Colorado is negligible. It doesn't matter."
Yep.
No,
You
none
cannot
of
use
this.
these
You cannot use these numbers. They are 0. They do not matter to the entirety of the conversation because you could not use a sample n of 13 out of 900 is nothing.
It really it's 11.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because 2 of them are 0.
Right.
I actually listed one more thing, and it said your sample size is too small. We can't pull up the numbers. I think I listed like my experience years, 6 to 10. And it said, yeah, sample size is too small. Can't do it.
1% of the entirety of the population of athletic trainers. And that doesn't even account for secondary school. That's all athletic trainers in Colorado. We're talking about 1% of athletic trainers in the state of Colorado answered. So, no, doesn't help. Doesn't show anything about the current state of what athletic trainers in Colorado are being paid.
Yep. So, yeah, all that to say, this is all worthless. So please, next time the salary survey comes around, if you still have access, is it already done?
By the time this comes out, by the time this comes out, we won't. It's currently still open.
Please,
it's currently still open, but it will be closed by the time the episode comes out. So here's what I'll say. I'm trying not to get worked up because I get mad about how I sound when I get worked up. But here's how we're going to go about it. You cannot complain. You can't use this data to improve your pay situation with your employer in any way if you're not reporting it. So I've been in Colorado, other people have emailed me because I was in a position where I could provide numbers where we have gone rounds. When your employer is doing a market assessment to find out, should we be paying these people more because they're saying that other people are being paid more than them? They use these numbers. So you can take these numbers and say, hey, the national average in athletic trainers should be being paid is $77,000. And they go, okay, well, but what is it in Colorado? What is it in the metro area of Colorado? What is it in the Pueblo area of Colorado? If there are no numbers to pull from, a financial advisor, a CEO, a CFO is going to say, nope, we're doing just fine because there's no numbers to compare to. So when I say statistically, it doesn't matter. What I'm saying is to a financial person, to the business you work for, it doesn't matter to them because they think what they're paying is appropriate because that's what the contract they negotiated said they were going to pay. And they don't care otherwise as long as their bill comes out in the black for the end of the year. So when you're looking at this, if we are not reporting our numbers, we are not providing our employers the ability to argue on our behalf. So you have to help yourself by reporting your own numbers and don't ignore it. Don't just say, someone else is going to do it. 11 actually, apparently. 1% of people in Colorado are reporting to this survey. I was probably the one in the 11 to 15 year sample. Or
Yeah.
maybe it was Ashley. Between the two of us, one of us is that number.
hmm
Yep.
And I am curious about this because I filled it out and I would have been in the 1 to 5 years. And so I'm like, did it take mine? Did it go as zero? So I'm not even within that. And that's why you have to have a larger sample size, because when you have errors where if mine didn't get counted or if mine got listed as zero because something didn't go through correctly, you have to be able to account for that with a large sample size. We don't have that. So how much is that $0 entries dragging down that median? Could it be up to 70? I, I don't know, because we don't have numbers. So please fill it out next time it comes across your email inbox. Okay, so let's get into how to make some changes. So first thing is, how do we quantify our worth? Because that's the most important thing, and that's basically just called value. How do we increase our value, which is the monetary value that is tied to our worth. So the first thing is what we just talked about: know your worth. So that was the point of that entire introduction section, is understand where the nation's at, understand where your state's at, understand where your colleagues are at, and start from there. So salary improvements are driven by advocacy and data, not sentiment. Don't go in and say, I feel like I do a lot. Look how much I hate to say this, they care, they don't care, right? When it comes down to forking over more money, doesn't move the needle. This has to be driven by data. Insurance doesn't go and say, hey, well, Katie's really, her patients really like her. Let's give her a $3,000 input, or let's increase her reimbursement rates X amount. Like, no, they're going to look at patient reported outcome measures and they're going to still deny. But the main thing that I want to start off with, you guys kind of touched on this a little bit. Do not be afraid to discuss your salary. Do not trust if an employer says you are not allowed to discuss your salary. That is an illegal prohibition. So know that you're allowed to. They are not allowed to say you cannot. The only person that gets harmed by discussing your salary is the employers. Okay. That harm is the bottom line. They spend more money, right? So it's not really harm, but not
All it
discussing your
does is make
salary.
people uncomfortable. And
Yes,
that's
that's all
their
it
fault,
is.
not your fault.
Yes. And I've had really good discussions where I'm not making a lot. My colleagues aren't making a lot. I've had good discussions where I'm not making a lot. My colleagues making less. And then I've had discussions where I'm not making a lot and the other person's getting paid a ton. And Ashley had a story with that where she's like, I wasn't getting paid a lot, but then I came back and I got bumped up a lot. So discussing your salary only helps us. It helps our profession. It helps us individually. There's a reason why it's illegal to say you can't discuss it. It is good for everyone. Please discuss your salaries so that we can all collectively work to improve them. The secondary school value model is awesome to use as a resource. I highly recommend everyone uses that. One of the things we're going to go on a couple things they discuss, but value versus worth. AT's worth, in my experience, and correct me if I'm wrong from what you guys have seen, traditionally the perception of how much we're worth and how much we're appreciated is very, very high. The value does not match. When I tell people my salary, they're like, excuse me, what? They understand how much I do. They know how much I'm worth, but they're shocked at the value amount. So value is the monetary cost tied to your services. And I think when we have this discussion, a lot of the times athletic trainers target the salary advocacy by trying to increase their worth. And I think that's fundamentally the wrong way to go about it. We need to go about increasing our value and demonstrating our value. So there's a couple different ways to do that. CPT codes can be a really helpful one because that's already a standard in the industry, but you have to sometimes change your documentation on how you're doing that. So a lot of us use CPT codes as a way to track what we did, not how much money it was worth. So we might see one person, we say, I handed out an ice bag, I taped his foot, I did an eval, we did therapeutic exercise, and I helped him stretch. And they put all those in the CPT just as a list of, I did these things today. But you can't do that if you're using it as a monetary value. You have to use the rule of 7 to 15 minutes or whatever it is. You can only
8-minute rule.
8-minute rule. Thank you. I was on either side of it. You got to use that rule to adequately portray. Because if you go to your employer and say, I billed this much, and they look into it at all and they see, well, you're providing 12 CPT codes per patient visit, they're going to be like, this is nothing. I'm going to throw this out. This isn't accurate information. So be careful with that. So Anything to add before I jump in, because I can get kind of long winded on the next one. Anything to add on the value
Yeah.
versus worth?
Well, I'm just gonna repeat the post that I sent you from New Mexico that just came out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That, $2.7 million value is what the estimated value of athletic trainers at a single high school is providing each year. So when you talk about what your value is, you're not getting paid what you're worth. because the study just came out that said we're saving $2.7 million according to a New Mexico study.
You get a whole nother zero to my
Yeah.
salary, and you'd still be making 1.5 million more. That's insane. Or saving, I guess.
So
Okay, so this one is
so tell us how they calculated that, CJ.
yes, we'll get into that. Don't worry. Another thing the secondary school value model touches on, and this one is super important. I kind of preach this all the time because I feel like it's the number one thing we do wrong as a profession. I think it goes back to tying into the we're trying to increase our worth. Services should not be for free. And this is fundamentally difficult for athletic trainers because we're there to provide value and or to provide services to patients and take care of them and do what's in their best interest. And saying no is hard when it comes to that. We are salaried, so saying no is hard because we're paid, we work in as much as we need to get the job done. But services that have no worth to someone are of no value. And that's quoted from the secondary school value model from the NATA. So every time an athletic trainer agrees to give away services, whether that's in coverage, skills, knowledge, or hours, that's outside of their job description, it makes it more difficult to show true value of your expertise. If you're willing to do something for free, why would somebody pay you for it? You just demonstrated the value of your service is $0. So why would they pay you more for it? If our value or if our worth is already so high, the result of you giving away your expertise is zero because they already know your worth. The problem is your value is not high. So why are you giving away free things to build your worth if your worth is already super high? So it doesn't translate. So that's another issue with it. I think we got to change the mindset from trying to prove our worth, which is already high. I'll say it again in case you guys didn't hear me. It's already high. And we need to protect the value of the services. So if somebody comes in that's outside of my job description to treat, or if an event comes up that's outside of my job description to treat, or whatever it is, we have to be okay saying no because that's not in my job description. That's not part of my services I provide. If you want that covered, it's going to be additional compensation, whether that looks like a salary increase, whether it looks like overtime, whether it looks like a stipend, whatever it may be. If covering JV events on a Saturday or outside of clinic hours is outside of it's not something we typically cover, I'm not going to go in and cover it on my free time. I'm going to hop off my soapbox for a second and throw it your way, Ashley, before we get Katie's thoughts.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback that. If you're covering like JV events and you're not required to, you are providing those services for free. And we're already there then. So they are not even going to be asking for coverage for those things because you're already covering them. But if you are not there because you are not contracted to cover them, then they will be like, hey, where's the athletic trainer? Like, it'd be great if we could have the athletic trainer here. And that is how we're going to get paid to help cover those events. And it's not just an hourly pay because oftentimes for many of us, there's only one of us at the school and there is no way we can cover all of those events by ourselves. So that's also advocating for potentially a second athletic trainer, an additional athletic trainer at your school. And I think we can all understand how valuable that would be, especially at our larger schools. So you're doing yourself harm if you're going outside of your purview to cover other things. So
Mm-hmm.
just be careful. It is a fine line. And again, we do all have the bleeding hearts and we want to help everyone. So walk the line, but try to be cognizant of not working for free.
Mm-hmm. Katie, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm going to speak directly to you as if you are going to talk to your athletic director or the CEO or the district person, whoever is going to negotiate your salary with you. Do not show up to those games. If you feel bad, listen, they were going to get hurt whether you were there or not. That is the unfortunate case of what sports are. If you are there and just handle it, nobody sees the panic that comes across. The first game where you are not there and it is sheer pandemonium, because our coaches are first aid and CPR trained, correct? Watch them try to handle an emergency situation on their own. As soon as that happens, people get very vocal very quickly. So, when we talk about how much less experienced and skills the lower level athletes are, the more injuries occur, the more likely you are to see that happen. Now, you can get ahead of that and go in, and you can go in and quote the statistics to your athletic director, the whoever, the numbers. You can quote athletic trainer to coach ratios. You can quote athletic athlete to coach ratios, athletic trainer to athlete ratios. All of these things play into this argument. But when we talk about who gets the coverage, the majority of the time it is varsity events only. And when we talk about that, you should be leaving after those varsity events happen. Now, most of the time, you're already at your school, you're covering the lower events because the lower levels play first, and then the varsity event occurs. So, most of the time, that's not a problem until a Saturday where sophomore basketball is playing instead, or sophomore baseball, or freshman baseball, or whatever, and you're not there. You should not be there, and you should not be going, you should provide a kit to them. I 100%. Let those coaches know, train those coaches. Hey, I am not employed to be here for your game. If you want me here, you need to go talk to the athletic director. You need to go talk to who's ever in charge. The likelihood of the injury occurring in a freshman game versus a varsity game does not change. Now, the type of injury might change because there is an increase in intensity that occurred as players get more skilled, as they mature and get older. The collision and contact side of things gets more intense, so those injuries might be bigger. But the less coordinated athletes, the less skilled athletes have more minor injuries. They still have the same injury rate, and we aren't providing an athletic trainer, and a numbers person can see that as a reason to pay more. But if you're just showing up because you're worried about them, we all worry. It is characteristic of athletic trainers that we can't take away. You want to be there to help your athletes. You have to do yourself the service of not showing up when you're not being paid to be there.
And it's not a quiet quitting. It's just understanding your job role, understanding your job description, and working within that, and using it as a tool to say, this is what I'm paid to do. I would love to do more,
And I
but
would have that conversation up front at the beginning
mhm,
of the season with those lower level coaches. Hey, I will not be there. You need to know how to do this. If a parent comes to talk to you, no, because these are my hours. This is what I work. This is what I'm contracted for. Anything above and beyond that has to go to the next person. That's not within, I can't even argue with you for it.
mhm.
You have to argue with the next person who's ever doing the contracting. It used to be me. I used to field those conversations all the time. And we would say, listen, the contract is written between these and these times. We can do the best we can. And we were lucky our contract was written that if they requested it ahead of time with 2 weeks notice, they would do their best to provide it. So a lot of times, if you're the athletic trainer and you're in this position, good for you, because I would put the request in ahead of time and be like, hey, I know this event is coming up and I know we need coverage, and there's a tournament and it's a C-level lacrosse tournament that's a 12-hour day. We need to cover that. So I would just put the request in for the athletic director because he would know it was coming too, but he'd forget, right?
Mhm.
And so you put those requests in ahead of time. Okay, well, now bill the extra. Can't say it loud enough. Bill the extra. Make sure your employer is billing for those extra services, because if they're not, their fault that they're missing the money. But then it goes back to you were covering it and somehow it ended up being free. So
Mhm.
follow up. Make sure that when you cover extra, if it's within your salaried hours, if it's within what your hourly pay is, be sure on the flip side that the company is following up and getting the additional pay for that. Because if they're not, now the business is giving it away for free. If a financial person finds out that we're giving stuff away for free, the business people, if you own your own business, you would never do it. So you got to make sure that that piece of it is followed up on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Ashley made a great point of it. when we add those 12-hour days, right, that might just be too much for me to do. And I might be sitting there saying, I don't want to work those extra hours to get increased pay, which is fair. There is a breaking point where one person can only do so much. And if the solution is, okay, well, Katie, you're saying you have to cover all these things extra. They should be covered. They should be covered. Do you want to cover them? And you're like, I would love the extra money. For my sanity, I cannot. I do not have enough time. I'm one person. And then they say, okay, well, let's hire a 0.5 FTE, full-time equivalent. And all of a sudden, now you've got help. And now, even though your salary hasn't changed, your work-life balance has improved. That we talk about benefits a lot when we talk about salary. That is a benefit to it. So even if your salary doesn't change, if you have more time to spend with your family, more energy, more time to do things that you want to do, your salary is not going to feel as low because you're not always at work and you're able to live life a little bit more. So keep that in mind as we have this discussion. Want to touch, we've mentioned it a couple times, but want to just touch a little bit more expanded on the Fair Labor Standards Act. It's a federal act. It delineates salary exempt versus salary non-exempt. And we have athletic trainers who fall in both of them. Salary exempt, you are eligible for overtime, but it's not required. Your pay is based on a salaried rate that you get every year. They can pay you overtime if they want to, but you kind of just work however many hours to get the job done. Those one are a little bit more tricky to negotiate salary, because if you're saying I'm doing this, I'm working 55 hours a week. Well, yeah, you're salary exempt. You have a guaranteed salary that you're getting every week or every 2 weeks. So that's the benefit of having a guaranteed salary. If you're non-exempt, you're eligible for overtime. So both are eligible for overtime. But if you're non-exempt, you're required to be paid overtime if you work over 40 hours in a week, or over, I think it's 120 in a pay period, or in a month. I think I don't remember what exactly is. Look it up. It's easy to find. But if you work over 40 in a week, then you're required overtime. You're still paid based on a salary because you're salaried, non-exempt. So your hourly rate is based off a salary, but you still have to work those 40 hours. A lot of those people will clock in. Some will just say, hey, you're working 40 hours, track it yourself. Those are a lot easier to say, hey, I clocked in and I ran out of my 40 hours by Thursday night, and I still have Friday, and I still have a game on Saturday morning. And that's where you can say, look how much extra is needed. And that's when you really need to be documenting everything. Document your administrative duties, document your conversations. That one is more intensive to prove the hours that you worked, but it's also better data wise. So just wanted to throw the difference between those two in there.
I've done both, CJ.
Yeah, me too.
So here's what I will tell you. If you're an athletic trainer, if your company will not approve overtime, which is an interesting situation to be in as an athletic trainer, because you have no control over the weather, for example. So, so if you've ever worked a game and had a 3-hour lightning delay, and then you're like sitting there and you're like, who do I have to call to get my overtime approved? Right?
Hey guys, we have 30 more minutes on the lightning delay, but
Right.
I just hit my 40, so I'm gonna go home.
Right. So somebody else take over and be in charge of when we can go back on the field. I have never had an employer that said you have to call to get this approved due to that situation. But that was one where it was, there were weeks where I would end up 65 hours into my 40-hour work week because of all the different things I was doing. And I finally had to be like, I can't keep doing it, because I was an exempt employee, and I was like, my workload is too high. And you guys are saying it all fits under my one salary, which is not nearly what it should be for what I'm doing. And so I think that matters a lot. It's easy to find 40 hours a week to work.
Very easy.
It's
hard
my
to
situation.
only be 40 hours, I
Yes.
think.
In my situation, especially in the fall and the spring, staying at an exact 40 is hard. The benefit of the exempt was during the summer. If you work 1 hour, you get paid 40. So that they did not love that, but as an employer, it makes sense. So sometimes during the summer, getting up to your 40 hours is hard. So there's always stuff to do. That's when I get all my paperwork done, though. EAPs, right? I think the Swiss Army knife of athletic trainers comes into play here a lot. And you have to have your venue-specific EAPs. We were all trained into us that we had to get all these, and the documentation episodes have come out. In order to get there, spend your summers doing all of that time. You'll get your 40 hours pretty quickly.
Yeah, so we just went into how it's not hard to hit 40, but how it's hard to stay under 40. You have a lot of things to do. one of the things I always talk about is we have so much that we have on our plate that we need to be doing. We don't need to be doing those extra things that are technically not in our job description, but we want to be team players. It is, in my experience, it's very hard to go above and beyond and then go to your employer and say, look at everything I'm doing, and have them say, oh, you've been doing so much. We're going to pay you for what you've been doing in the past. Typically, in my experience, they pay you for what you're going to do in the future. You get raises based on how good of an employee you are, yada yada. That's all kind of understood. But with those non-medical duties that it does not take a trained person to do, delegate them. Don't take on doing the scoreboard. Don't take on setting up footballs equipment for setting up the walkie-talkies. Delegate the water. Have the freshmen do that. You need to be treating athletes and getting athletes prepped and making sure everything's safe. You don't need to be doing these non-skilled things. Okay. You don't need to set up the athletic field for events. That is not your job. You need to be doing other things. And if
And
you're
I will
doing,
fight you. Who is doing this, CJ? What is happening? What
I'll
athletic
tell you
trainers?
off air.
Stop doing that,
Don't
people.
do that. Yeah,
Stop it.
that is hurting our profession.
I have also done that because
Stop
I
it.
know how to do it. I know. Listen,
I
I
know
only do
it's
it when coaches
the
find me
odd,
funny.
yeah, the odd. Like, hey, I'll help out here. Yeah, I can help out here, but don't make it a consistent thing. And if you
Right.
help out once and they start asking you more, be like, hey, like I'm helping out, try and be a team player, and because I know you are stressed, but like this can't become a common thing. And in the secondary school value model, they mention ask yourself a couple questions to help figure out what you should and shouldn't be doing. Ask yourself, is it in my job description to do this? Will I be compensated for the extra duties if I'm taking on extra duties? If there's a conflict between non-athletic training duties and my role as a athletic trainer, which takes priority? If I always bring the football equipment to set up, but then there's a concussion for a team and I can't get that stuff, and then it's late and the coaches are panicking and now they're all mad at me because the field wasn't set up like I usually do, try and look ahead and anticipate, like, how am I able to do my job if I'm taking on all this other stuff that I'm doing? So keep that in the back of your mind. Drives me nuts when I see people do it, but I like, yeah. Last thing to end out this section, document. You need numbers. We talked about this right from the get-go. You need to show what you're doing and you need to show it accurately. So I'll throw out a couple suggestions that the secondary school value model has, and then any that you guys have on the top of your head, throw in there. So athlete contacts, anytime they walk in the athletic training clinic or facility, or anytime you talk to them in the hallway. All injury evaluations should already be documented, but make sure you get those in there. Any communications you have, so emails to parents, emails to coaches, emails to teachers, emails to the school nurse, log all that and have, hey, I sent 3,000 emails this year. Like, that takes time to do. That's admin. 3,000 is probably low, honestly.
So it's not even close. That's
Yeah.
it's like 4 weeks of fall season.
Yeah. Keep your treatment logs, how many treatments you're doing, use those CPT codes. Track your hours worked and don't inflate them. I think this is, as I've had this discussion in the past year, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm working 60, 65 hours. And I'm like, okay, so when were you there Monday? And then we get Tuesday, and it ends up being 52. It felt like 65, but it was 52. So track them accurately and don't inflate your hours, because that's not going to help when people actually look into it and say, oh, wow, you are. And then they look at it and like, you're working 50. Still more, but now that sounds less because you said 65. If I go in and I say I'm working 45 hours a week, I'm dying here, and then I actually track it, it's 55, that sounds worse than 45. Whereas 55 sounds like not that much compared to 65. So be accurate. A couple other ones that they recommended are hydration logs. If you're working with wrestling or any other sports outside, and you're working with specific athletes on their hydration, weight logs, daily injury notes. So if your coaches need an injury report every day because they're not great at technology, it needs to be on paper, that's admin time. So track how many you're giving. Coaches notes, if you're providing notes before practice on what kids can do for practice, that's even more stuff. Parents notes, nurses notes. So track all of that. And most importantly, track your outcome measures. I think this is a huge shortfall in our profession, especially in our settings. It's hard to do. But with EMRs today, you can have it in the system where they can access it and fill it out on their own. You can make it into a Google Doc and pop it on to their profile or email it to them or whatever, and they can fill it out without you really having to do anything. They can fill it on a sheet of paper and you can look at it later. But healthcare is an outcomes-driven market. It's not a feels-driven market. You have to show that your treatment is providing an impact and helping people get better. Like, I have so and so amount percent of ankle injuries that come in are seeing improvements within 2 weeks of seeing me. That outcome measure, you're quantifying how much better they're feeling. It's probably going to be really high because a lot of those are coming in and then they don't show up again because they're feeling better. So great. Yeah. Hey.
The vibes are successful, CJ.
What's that?
The
Yeah,
vibes. The
the
vibes are
vibes.
successful.
That'll get me a raise, right? The vibes.
Yeah.
But just look at insurance, because a lot of these financial discussions are kind of looked at in the same realm of the insurance. It's liability. It's how much are we saving our parents from insurance, and how much are we saving the school from insurance, and that all goes on outcome measures. So please use those. Please consider implementing them. They're vital to increasing our value. Any other things that you guys know off the top of your head to track?
No, I think it's important. We just covered documentation in one of our last episodes, 2 episodes long worth of documentation, and that
Yeah,
is
so we
where
won't
this
dive
comes
deep
into
into it
play.
today.
Yeah. It's just that's where this comes into play. You got to have a sign-in sheet. Use those tips to make this easier, but those are types of things where a sign-in sheet can show contacts. It doesn't show every band-aid you hand out, but if it's showing how many tapings you're doing, how many ice bags you're doing, right? Because the amount of people you see in the hour after school matters a lot when you talk to someone who's a numbers person. And if you can say, hey, there were 45 student athletes in the athletic training room after school today, that's a big number to them.
Mm-hmm.
What percent of the entire fall population is coming in an hour and a half time span after school each day? Because that number matters. And when it changes, like if you have to go into your school early because a team is leaving and you have to prep them for it, keep track of that and keep track of why. So I'm a spreadsheets person. It's how I live my life. It's a Google sheet. It's on my phone. It's on my computer. And I just put in like a little side note of what that included that day. Oh, I come in at 2 every day, but that day I had to come in at 12:30 because, and what did I do in that hour and a half, to show my reasoning for why it was there. Because if you're just doing numbers, let's say I was there 65 hours a week. Why? We don't pay you to come in 65 hours a week. We don't expect you to be here 65 hours a week. So why are you saying that you're here 65 hours a week? Well, if you can then show it, okay, well, what is that? Who else could be doing that? Is that a school nurse duty? Is that a school psychologist duty? Is that a counselor's duty? Like who else could be helping with this task? Are you helping the athletics department? Is it, the athletics assistant being benefited by you being there to do it? All of those things come into play with this, and it helps show value and show maybe where the entire school system could change just based on that amount of time.
You are fantastic at segues today, because that goes right into making the argument. So
I didn't even do that on purpose.
I didn't even read the outline. I didn't know what we were talking about when I showed up today. I'm just kidding. Yeah, we'll get into this in a little bit in this section, but understand that you're not always going to get the right answer. You're going to get some pushback, and that's okay. And one of the feedback that you will probably get is, well, why are you working that many hours? And I had that conversation previously with a former employee or employer, and it was really easy because I pulled up my job description and I said, you want me to do all of this? If I only do game coverage in your clinic hours, I'm at 35 hours a week, and I still got to do admin time, and I got to communicate, and I got to do orders. And so like, it was kind of an aha moment. They're like, oh yeah, our job description kind of requires you to work more than the 40. So understand that's probably the number one pushback you'll get is, why are you working this many hours if we're not paying you to work that many hours, or if you're, whatever. So expect that feedback. Okay, so first part in making the argument, now that you have all of your information gathered and you've got your little folder and you're ready to go, understand your full-time equivalent. So that goes to understanding your hourly rate. Full-time equivalent is 40 hours per week. If we are working, if you're working 50 hours a week, you're working 1.25 FTEs a week. Is that right? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
If you're working 60 hours a week, you're 1.5 FTEs. So understand your full-time equivalent. As a salaried employee, I feel like that really plays a big factor, because you can go in and say, hey, you have me hired as a full-time equivalent of 1, but the hours I'm consistently working, I'm working 1.25 or I'm working 1.5. So how do we address this? How do we fix this? This is becoming a large enough job where it's going to require 2 athletic trainers, or I need to be compensated for working that 0.25 extra. So It's a lot, and Katie, you have experience in this. It's a lot more cost effective to have a single employee work additional hours and pay them more than it is to hire another employee to work a 0.5. So if you're comfortable working 50, 55 hours a week, it's actually cheaper for a company to pay you a significant amount more, like 10 grand, 15 grand more, than it is to hire an employee and pay them a 0.5 FTE. Right, Katie?
It is. I wish I was experienced in getting paid for that extra time, though, CJ. But yes, so just re-employing someone else, like if you were to leave and then they have to hire someone new, the cost of hiring a new employee is about an extra 10 to 20 grand salary a year, just from the training and the different benefits and all of that that goes into this. So when you look at it, the easiest way to explain it is what your employer pays for you versus what they just pay you is about 20% extra when you account for benefits, 20 to 30% extra. So it's your salary plus 20 to 30% is what the company has to pay for you as an employee. So if you think about having to pay two people for that, that's an extra 20 to 30% on top of each salary versus paying you plus that 20% to 30% on top of your own salary. Hopefully that makes sense.
Makes sense to me. I've
So
also
like,
already heard that, so maybe I
yeah,
could benefit.
I think the math, right, the easy math, if we use 50,000, which hopefully that's not the math that you're actually doing, but here we are. If you're making 50,000, what the company is paying for you is 62. If they're paying two people at 50,000, that's 100 plus the extra would be
24,000.
125.
Yeah.
Or if they're paying you 75, they're actually paying 87, so they're saving money.
A lot of
Hopefully.
money.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hopefully
that's like 50 grand worth of
that's a
money.
pretty close math. I'm not a mathematician. If I'm wrong, don't come at me. But
It's okay. Hey,
that
we're
is
athletic trainers. We're not good at math. The good thing is the people listening are also athletic trainers. They're
yes.
probably not great at math either.
Just don't check. I'm pretty sure I have done that math a lot of times. I'm just remembering numbers. I'm not actively doing math off the top of my head. But I think that's how it equates out to. So what I'm saying is if you can do the 1.5 and get paid the 1.5, it saves the company money. Now work-life balance is a whole nother episode and we talk about it a lot. So be aware of what you're saying. But if you're saying like, here are all the job responsibilities and they can math it out correctly, and you can do it efficiently. I'm a big efficiency is my biggest problem. If I'm a great employee, I'm better than average. I happen to get twice the amount of work that someone else would do in that amount of time. Would really frustrate me if someone else is making overtime solely because they do everything slower or less efficiently than I do. And so there's a world there where you have to show your value to your employer. You have to show your worth to your employer. You have to argue efficiency sometimes.
Yes. So getting into a little bit more math, if you're adding additional responsibilities and you're okay with that, let's say you're salaried and just for simplicity's sake, let's say you're working 40 hours a week and you're getting paid $60,000. Your hourly rate is $28.84. If you're saying, hey, I'm doing this and it's taking 2 hours extra a week, I would like to be compensated for that. And your employer comes back and says, cool, we'll give you a $2,000 raise for doing that. And you're thinking, hey, my salary just went up to 62. Let's go. Your hourly rate actually just decreased. You went from $28.84 an hour to $28.39 an hour. So when you're looking at what's being offered, you need to look at, well, how many, my salary is based off 2,080 hours in a year work. That's 40 hours per week. If I'm adding 2 hours per week, it's something like 2184. I don't remember. I did this yesterday, but so you take that and you divide your hours worked by your salary and you're actually making less per hour. So you actually just got pay cut and you added on more responsibility. Because you can't just look at what's my salary. And I think a lot of people just look at what's my salary, what's my number, what's the final number. That's all I care about. And that's how we get into that burnout of, well, now I'm working so much and my salary is not super high. Well, it's because you just diluted your per hour rate from $28.84. You went down 50 cents an hour. That's a pretty big pay cut. But if you look at the numbers, you say, okay, 42 hours a week. If you guys give me a $5,000 raise, I now have an hourly rate of 29.76. So now your hourly rate actually went up. So be careful when you're advocating for the salary. An increase in your salary is not actually an increase in your pay a lot of times if your hours are increasing alongside of it. So keep that in the back of your mind. Just because the total number goes up does not mean you're getting paid more. I think that's a
And be
shortfall
aware
that
of
people
what
always.
tax bracket you are in,
Yeah.
because that will change as well. This is a lot of numbers stuff, you guys, and it's not fun to get into. But if you are going to be arguing your salary, these are all things to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, if you're going to change tax bracket, and now your take home is going to change, and so be aware of that as well when you're making these arguments. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying argue for less just because of your tax bracket change by any means, but just
Are you
know
enough to
what the
offset it?
change, yes,
Yeah. Be
know
like,
what the change is going to be.
yeah, and I've had somebody who they were given they were offered a $5,000 retention bonus when they switched companies, and they negotiated it to 65 because they're like, well, I'm going to lose all of like half of that from taxes. I'm going to get less than $2,000 on that retention bonus that was supposed to be 5,000 because of taxes. So they bumped up another 1,500 to compensate for that, so that they actually got, I think 4,500 was what it came out to. That was their take home. So take that in consideration. Like think about if you're bumping up to the next tax bracket and they're offering you 2,000, be like, hey, well, this is going to bump me into the next tax bracket. Can I get compensated so I'm not just making the same amount, but my number's higher? I'm paying more in taxes. I'd like to actually see some take home. So keep that in the back of your mind. All right. So this next one is hefty, and we're going to kind of stay surface level on it because I think it's like 80 pages long, but it's awesome. It's a secondary school athletic training committee for the National Athletic Training Association. It's their position improvement guide. This kind of goes hand in hand with your salary, but also goes with improving your position. So that includes salary, that includes work-life balance. Because again, not everything is just number driven. If you can make your position more viable to stay long term, you stay long term, and then your salary increases and everything benefits your work-life balance is better. So it's the position improvement guide, and I recommend you guys both at least skim over it. Everyone listening, it's actually really good. So the first thing they recommend is act your worth. Okay. How many of you have seen other athletic trainers that are sweats, hoodie, walking around like they're just, a coach on the sideline? Nothing against coach, but not a medically trained professional, not a healthcare professional. And I fell into this trap as well, like going in with that hat backwards, like haven't shaved, just look completely disheveled. That is not portraying a healthcare professional, right? Katie,
CJ,
have at it.
hat backward,
It
sweatpants,
was
holes in your pants.
not sweats, only hat backwards on a Saturday for JV football.
I wear leggings to work a lot. I think working in an athletic environment, you got to be able to move with your patients. That's not to say that scrubs isn't appropriate, but here's what I will tell you. People know who I am, and I present myself in a way that people know who I am. The most recent one was even a couple weeks ago. I went out on the court to take care of someone. Someone came up and was like, ooh, for a hot second, I thought you were mom. And then I realized you were not, because the way that I portray myself when I'm handling a situation, they're like, oh, a mom. Nope, that's not a mom. Because they're like, who's running out on the court? Oh, okay. I have sent people home for what they're wearing at an event. I have sent, especially the first day, I've sent athletic training students home. I've sent college student athletic training program students home. What you wear matters, and people should know who you are. And I think that is part of our professionalism as a whole. Our standards include being professional. People should know who you are. When you have worked at a place long enough, who people just walk in and they're like, oh, there's Katie. It's really nice, and you can kind of get away with wearing sweats. I don't outdoors, you have to wear
You
what's
wear whatever
appropriate
keeps you
for the
warm.
weather.
Yeah.
Indoors, for my first few years, I would wear heels on game day. I would wear nice shirts. I'm not a polo and khakis person. I think that helps with burnout of the profession. Just my personal opinion. But I will wear dress pants to a game. Never a skirt if you're doing that, good for you. But I want to be able to move with my athletes and feel comfortable. So a lot of times I'm in movable clothes, but I'm always wearing, and I a lot of times will have the school buy me something that says athletic trainer on it. Um, so that people know when I walk out on the court that I'm there and I'm there for a reason. Um, Also, because sometimes I'm little and I need help. And so they're like, who's that small lady running out onto the court? Oh, somebody go out there and help her because that 6'5" athlete can use her forehead as a crutch to walk off the court. Um, no, I was gonna say, but I think it matters. Like, just don't like you should not be in holy sweatpants working a game. Um, if you can avoid it. Like I get it. Outside you gotta
Mhm.
wear what you've got in your car sometimes, but um also know that and dress for the weather. Let's all get on board and act our profession.
Yes, I made a change a couple of years ago, and I had been out of school for 5 years at that point, so I was pretty well known. Like everyone knew who I was. On athletic training days or athletic training facility days where I wouldn't have any games, I'd be kind of inside treating, maybe going down to practices. I dressed business casual, and it was amazing. Some of the parents I talked to for lower level games, they'd be like, "Oh, are you the team doctor?" I'm like, "Sweet, all right, now I'm a doctor instead of a personal trainer." I'll take that perception any day of the week. It does make a big difference. Like if I'm asking for a larger salary and they perceive me as professional healthcare provider or healthcare professional, that's going to be different than if they kind of view me in line with coaches because their stipends are not huge. So act your worth, dress your worth, limit, like be professional, limit venting to your colleagues. Don't vent to your coaches and to your admin because that just comes across as a little bit more unprofessional. So vent, you need to vent, please vent, but vent to the correct people. Remain professional in those situations. I'm going to go quickly, just for the sake of time, through these next ones. So cost containment. The school pays insurance premiums a lot of times for their athletics. Having an athletic trainer on site decreases the school's and the district's liability and keeps their premiums low. So use that, keep that in the back of your pocket. And then send your seasonal and annual reports to those who decide your salary as well as those who help decide your salary. So if you're an outreach, send it to your supervisor, also send it to the principal, the AD, whatever. Don't just wait until you're going to ask for a salary increase or a funding increase to send those numbers. Send them consistently so that they're kind of on their mind and they're like, man, that was a lot. Next season, that was a lot again. And then when you come with the ask, they're not surprised. Like, yeah, I saw how much you're doing. I kind of had a feeling this conversation would be coming. So keep those in the back of your mind. Do you guys send those? Just curious. No?
I
Yeah.
used to when at my previous we do we do I do not personally do them anymore. My company does them for me. I used to personally do them in my previous spot. I think this is also a good spot to throw in as far as cost containment. Stay on top of letting people know what the current cost of lawsuits is. Um, Nobody else is paying attention to that except for athletic trainers. When a heat stroke case comes across court and they're deciding on a $10 million lawsuit for a preventable death, like if there's a lightning strike and you're the one in charge for that and a court case happens, just kind of keep people in the know about what those lawsuits are currently costing,
Mm-hmm.
because our measly, what did we say, $77,000 is a
Yep.
lot cheaper than $10 million. Like
Yep.
the the math there is, it's real
Pretty.
cheap
Yeah.
to keep
Yeah.
paying. They could even keep upping the zeros after your number and still be paying a lot less money. When it comes to the grand scheme of things of who's going to have to pay for that if the common sense of the athletic training position goes away.
Yep.
So
So in this position improvement guide, I'm going to quickly roll through each of the parts that they list to make the argument, and then I encourage everyone to go and read more in depth into them. They first say determine the ideal situation, figure out what are you going to ask for, what's your ideal spot, evaluate your current situation, see what changes you can make. Is it within your job description to become closer to that ideal situation, or is something going to have to change within that? Develop a plan, identify the areas that you need to improve on. and help people to improve. Don't just tell people this needs to get better. Coach needs to communicate better. Help develop a plan to get them to be better. So go in with a plan, implement it, expect setbacks, expect no's, expect problems, expect it to gunk down your workflow. That's normal. And then evaluate and try again. So even if you fail spectacularly, you just learned what not to do and then tackle it again. So it's a very truncated view of that. And the reason for that is I wanted to spend a little bit more time as we wrap up here on what they mention in determining the ideal situation and making sure that you're prioritizing care over coverage when you're looking at improving your situation. And I want to expand on that with you guys. I want to get your thoughts. So they specify that care is what we do when we practice the art and science of athletic training. Coverage is a matter of being there and reacting to needs on an immediate basis. And our job inherently has both these intertwined. I think a lot of the times when we're talking about liability, we look more at coverage of just being there, being like not actually being an athletic trainer, just being an observer just in case. And I think that is a net negative for our profession where we can be doing so much more, but we get caught sitting at something where we're not doing anything and just in case something happens versus actively caring for patients and actively improving the situation and health of the athletes. Katie, wanted to get your thoughts, and then Ashley, curious to hear what your thoughts on that also.
Yeah, I all the time say, people say, "Oh, are you working or just watching?" Right? And I all the time say, if you see me, you prefer to see me not working, even though I'm just providing coverage, right? I'm watching. I watch the games a little different than you do. I'm always working, um, but if, but you don't see me when I'm working because I'm in the athletic training facility providing care. That's when I'm working. You see me providing coverage. I don't look like I'm working. And those are two very different scenarios because I can watch a game wholly different than what a spectator does. I provide care for that athlete from the time they get injured to the time they return back to play. Game time is such a short span in an athlete's career overall playing. I don't even know the right word I want to use for that. But they spend hours and hours and hours practicing. They also spend those hours strength training, they spend them doing treatment, they spend them doing some all of those things. The majority of my time should be spent on providing the care in the athletic training facility when they need it throughout their athletic career, not just when they're playing a game.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. And I think one of the ways I've helped become a little more visible, like with quotes, because I'm not actually visible to the parents, but I have started calling parents more often. Even for like the smaller, this chronic knee pain, right? So we give them the exercises and the stretches, but is it really like an injury? No, they just have some muscle imbalances, right? But like I will wrap them up in a compression wrap and I'll call parents and educate. And the parents then are like, oh, wow, that's awesome. And the more and more I do that, the more parents realize like what I actually do and they love it and they really appreciate it. And so to them, I'm much more visible because I'm calling them more often. And so that's something you could try to implement. And that took years to be comfortable to call parents, guys, because calling parents can sometimes be terrifying. Even though I very rarely had a bad parent phone call, like when I'm letting them know about something. But it's hard. It's a
Mm-hmm.
conversation you have to practice and work on, but it is something that lately has really been helping.
I could not agree more. And I think that's a very important piece of coverage. Like I said, coverage is inherently part of our job, but parents, when they see an athletic trainer on the sidelines at practice not doing anything, like, oh, that athletic trainer is always there, they're always available. That's They're not caring for the athletes. They're just sitting there waiting for something to happen when they could be doing something else and covering the event. So being in your ATF, you're still covering, you're available, but you're also caring for the athletes. But the parents, I think the public views coverage more importantly than the care. And by calling and saying, hey, here's what we're doing, you're now showing the care part. So they're not just seeing you on the sideline at a game whenever something might happen. So it's a delicate balance of coverage and care because both are necessary and both are required and both are super important to our jobs. And I'm not saying sitting on the sideline watching practice doing nothing is bad, But there's a delicate balance of if you're doing that all the time and nobody's getting any care, that's not really the ideal situation that we should be doing as athletic trainers. But you also don't want to never be on the sideline and never be seen and never covering stuff, because that's also not great. So this delicate balance. Katie, final thoughts on
Well,
that?
and advocate, like Ashley's saying, advocating for yourself, advocating for our profession. Not a freshman athlete's parents do not know most of the time what an athletic trainer is. So by calling that parent and saying, "Hey, my name's Katie. I'm the athletic trainer at this school. This is what I do." And if they don't know who you are, they're like, wait, what?" And you explain that to them, "Hey, this is my job. This is what I do." Now you've got that person roped in for 4 years. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And the more parents that know that, the more clout you have, the more they trust you, the more people know, and they're like, "How do you even deal with, my anymore?" It's how do you see all these athletes in one day? And that matters because now they know the care you're providing.
Mm-hmm.
And so to continuously call and touch base with them, I regularly am like, "I'm so sorry, it's 7:30. I'm calling you. I just finished with my patients for the day." Because I don't have time to stop and have the 20-minute conversation in between athletes all the time. But I do want to make sure I touch base with you. I'm so sorry it's late. And they're very appreciative. And it makes our profession look good. It advocates for each and every one of us by making a good impression on parents and having conversations with them.
Which indirectly ties into our salaries going up.
Yes. And I've actually found that the more you talk to the parents on the phone, the more you're calling them, the more they are actually advocating for you to
Mm-hmm.
other parents at games. Like,
Yep.
because I talked to a lot of parents on the phone and I couldn't for the life of you tell you what they look like, right? I have no
Yeah.
idea who these people are. But so when they show up at games and they're like, "Hey, I'm so and so's parent. Thank you so much for calling me." And then they go up into the stands and I hear them like, "Oh my gosh, Ashley is so amazing. She just like she gave us this whole exercise program. It's so great." And I was like, so they are actually advocating for us when we talk to them, you guys.
And then
So
you get the diamond in the rough, that like the one every so often that starts to go to the athletic director and be like, "Hey, Ashley's amazing. Like, she's really
yes.
good." And then, "Hey, how come Ashley's not at our JV game? She was at our football JV games in the fall, but now that my son's playing JV lacrosse, she's not there for those games. Like, why not? We want her there. We need her there." And boom, all of a sudden now they're advocating for you,
Yes.
and that's more duties. And then you can say, "Well, hey, I need a bump in my pay," or "Hey, we need another athletic trainer," and that's driven by the parents, and that's all
Yes.
started by you calling them and reaching out and showing the care. So this has been a really good conversation. We could have gone on for like 2 more hours, but I think the gist of it is this is a starting point for you guys. Use the resources that we've shared. Develop a plan. Is a long-term process, so don't expect it to happen overnight. Um, please advocate. Please hold yourself professionally. Please try and get your salaries up. And if we can bring the whole profession up, then it's going to drive our salaries up. So kind of consider doing your part to help that, even though it's a little bit more work on your end. But that will do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the CATA Secondary School Podcast. Thank you again to Katie and Ashley for hopping on. It's really helpful having your perspectives on this, since we all kind of have different views on everything throughout our careers. If you all enjoyed the conversation, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast to a colleague. Your feedback helps us make the show even better and more relevant to you. New episodes are released every other Friday, so be sure to check back for the next one. And until then, as always, thank you for listening and take care.